Welcome to the show, Sharon.
Hi, Chrissy.
So it's lovely to have you on today. I mean, it is under different circumstances. Normally you're here giving advice and things, but today you're going to share your story about loss, because I didn't know this about you. And as I said earlier, you know, Sharon is always smiling and happy and helping families with all her advice and her tips. But she did go through a loss. She lost her baby boy, Samuel, 21 years ago.
21 years ago, yeah.
So, but you pulled yourself through with some help, which is what we're always talking about on this program, about the importance of getting help. So can you tell us about what happened exactly?
Sure, okay. So I got married in 1995 and shortly afterwards fell pregnant quite quickly, but lost that first one through miscarriage, which isn't unusual, but it was unsettling at the time. And then about a year later I fell pregnant again, and I have to say initially it was quite hard to sort of feel excited because of what happened before. So when I got to the sort of the 3-month check and everything was all okay, I started to relax and sort of quite enjoy being pregnant. And I was young, I was 29 and I was fit and healthy, and the only thing I had to complain about really, as I think I said to you, was swollen ankles, and you know what I'm like with shoes, I couldn't get my shoes on, so that's all I had to complain about. So I was very sort of fit and healthy. And I was working in London at the time, very driven career woman, and had all intentions of going back full time after work. So certainly after I had the baby, and certainly after my experience, that was certainly one thing that did change. So I continued with my pregnancy. Everything seemed to be okay until one of the checks that I went to with my midwife, who said that I was showing signs of a condition called preeclampsia. Preeclampsia is a condition that affects women in pregnancy where the placenta isn't working properly, it's not formed properly, and it can affect the mum and it can affect the unborn baby, and there isn't a cure until the baby is born, if you like. So it's something that they like to monitor. So I was being monitored closely and sort of continued, and then I went on maternity leave, and it was I can remember it was a gorgeous hot summer, and during that time, I was having lovely lunches and went to my local NCT group and met, did all the things that you do, when you're looking forward to your first baby, buying clothes and getting the nursery sorted out. So it was it was a really lovely, exciting time, first baby. And then sort of more towards the end of my pregnancy, my midwife noticed that the condition was starting to worsen, and there were other signs and symptoms around preeclampsia that were sort of showing much more intently, and so then referred me to have some more regular hospital checkups. And that sort of progressed for a while until one day I went in for a routine check, and they were very concerned about how the preeclampsia had escalated. And then I had to be referred in, so I went into hospital and was monitored for a while in hospital, and then they discharged me and sent me home, only to be sent back 2 days later because the midwife was very unhappy with the blood pressure was sky high and all of the other indicators, so they were really quite concerned. And that was, by that stage I was full term, I was past my sort of due date. So when it was referred back in, and the decision was made then for an assisted, sort of like to bring on the labour with induction, they call it. So I was induced labour. And then started to go into the early stages of labour. So that sort of progressed, and I was being sort of monitored and things. And the midwife that was looking after us, what she noticed was sort of towards the sort of middle part of the labour, that every time I had a contraction, the baby, well, Samuel, his name was, heart rate dropped, which I didn't know at the time, but that was a sign that the baby is in distress. So they called in the senior registrar. He came in and checked and everything, and it was decided, let's continue to see how things go. We'll continue monitoring, but things just got well. I mean, that I didn't realise actually how things were sort of slowly getting worse at the time. Both my mum and Mark, my husband, were in the delivery suite with me. And you know, so when we talk about things, and when I think back retrospectively, clearly that's when things were starting to escalate, because they were sort of looking around worriedly. There were lots of people sort of coming in and out of the delivery suite, lots of sort of buzzing around and stuff. But I was totally unaware of, you know, what was going on. But you don't know what you don't know, do you? And then the registrar was called back in because they were very concerned about how the heart rate was dropping. And a decision was made. Initially, first of all, should we do an emergency cesarean? But then it was decided that I would have an assisted delivery through something that's called Ventouse, which is a bit like forceps type of thing. So it's an assisted delivery. And that continued. And then as he was born, what happened was he breathed in something that's called meconium. Now, meconium, these words, meconium is something that a baby passes, like a first bowel movement, when they are very distressed. And he asphyxiated on that. And that's when everything went totally crazy, and the crash team came in, and they were working on him, but unfortunately they couldn't revive him. So he sort of died at birth, at delivery. What was it that happened at that stage? Obviously, were you told immediately what had happened? I didn't. I had no idea what was. I knew something was terribly wrong. Yeah. And you just, everything was sort of panic stations in the delivery suite. I didn't know anything was wrong at that stage because they were obviously working on him and trying to revive him. And I kept sort of, kept straining and listening for that sort of first cry, that didn't come. And then, sort of everything just sort of slowed down. Okay. And then they came over and sort of said that they weren't able to revive him, and, and that he wouldn't be coming home with us as a newborn baby. Do you remember what went through your mind at that point? It was a total shock, I think. I mean, I felt at that stage sort of a disbelief, couldn't quite figure out what was going on. I think Mark and my mum were more distressed about it than I was. I think I was sort of in this sort of surreal sort of, what are you talking about type of thing. Mm-hmm. But slowly sort of the realisation sort of dawned, and it was devastating. I mean, it was the most surreal moment to sort of go in with, all of these sort of happy feelings and this, this you got your nursery bag ready at home, and nursery was ready at home, and my bag was packed with all the little outfits and stuff. And it's sort of, I have to say I probably felt a failure as a woman at that point. Sort of felt, well, how come everybody else can have a delivery and a safe baby and I can't? First of all, I'm miscarrying now. I've lost one at 4 terms. So now you did actually get to hold Samuel and say your goodbyes and even dress him and everything, didn't you? So how important was that? I mean, at the time, I thought it was a bit odd. But retrospectively, it was the best thing that could happen, and we were really lucky. And we had, by chance, my community midwife, who was looking after me at home, was on duty that night, and she found out what had gone on and came in. And she was like this sort of ray of light in this sort of darkness that sort of came in and just took over everything. And she said, right, you're still his parents, you're still, a mum and dad, and he's your little boy, and you need to hold him and you need to bath him. And we did all of those things and had photographs taken. And it was an important part of the grieving process, actually. And I still have the photographs, and we still have the blanket and stuff. And it's a really important part of that journey of acceptance and saying goodbye. So I was really glad that she did that, and she was amazing. Wonderful. Sharon, now your husband was quite worried about you, wasn't he, at one point, because obviously he was afraid for your safety as well, not to lose you as well on top of everything. Absolutely, because the story didn't stop there. The next day I was discharged, everything was okay, and I went home to be looked after in the community by my GP. And the next day my GP came in and checked me over and said, I'm really sorry to hear what happened. Checked my blood pressure and it was dangerously high, and he just turned around to my husband and said, you've got to get her into hospital right now. She's in danger of having a heart attack or a stroke. It's life-threatening. So I was taken straight back in and given medication. Now I was obviously so ill, I had no idea what was going on. I can't imagine what it must have been like for him, obviously just losing his son, then facing the possibility of losing me as well. So, you know, it was really tricky time for him. And we grieved very differently as well. And I think, you know, because he had that extra thing to sort of contend with, as well as, and one of the things he did say to me afterwards was, when we were talking about stuff sort of, you know, as the months went on, was when he was out and about, people would ask him how I was, but nobody asked how he was. So it was really interesting. Well, how's your wife? How awful, you know, or how's Sharon doing? But, you know, it was really interesting.
Would that have helped him, do you think? Did he say that would have made a difference?
I think so, because it was almost like he wasn't able then to sort of, didn't feel able to talk to anybody about how he was feeling, you know, and then the only person he felt he could talk to was me, and then I was deep in my grief as well. You know, you can see how people lose their way at a time when you would expect you to come together, but you're both lost in your own grief at the time.
Now, Sharon, we are unfortunately running out of time, but can you tell me, you did get some help from a charity, didn't you? How important was that for you?
Really important. So I did some counselling, but I also reached out to some charities. So the Stillbirth and Neonatal Death Society, they were amazing. They gave me lots of help and support, and I ended up fundraising for them. And also the charity Action on Preeclampsia, which is a charity that is specifically around the condition that I had.
How much did that help you in your recovery as well?
Really, really did, because it helped me to talk to people who, you know, who had experienced similar things, and talking about my story really helped me to come to terms with what was going on. So
is this one of the reasons why you went into what you do now, in coaching and helping?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think, you know, a lot of people would say to me, "Oh, you're so amazing. I don't think I could cope with that." But when you're faced with something where you're so powerless to do anything about it, you have two choices. You either deal with it the best that you can, or you go under. And believe me, there were times when I felt like I would, but it was important for me to make sure that what happened to me and what happened to Samuel wasn't in vain. So being able to give back was for me a way of sort of making sure that what happened was a positive came out of something so terrible.
So you didn't go back to your job in the city?
No, not at all. No. And you know, I'm driven by other things now. Then it was about success and money and position, and now it's more about sort of giving back and making a difference. You know, that's sort of where my drive is
like
now.
Success after a big loss, but you turned it around. And
absolutely.
Everything. And you have a lovely family as well. You've got two boys.
Two boys, 16 and 19. Very proud of them. We're a very close family. They know about Samuel as well. We talk about him openly, and I think that's important too.
Definitely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sharon, thank you so much for sharing your story, my love. I'm sure that's inspired our viewers.
Hope so. I hope so.
And we'll have you on very soon again to give more of your tips that will help the families out there.
I look forward to that, Chris.
Brilliant. Thank you. All right, everybody.